So welcome everyone to Together for Our Planet. I am excited to be here tonight on behalf of Edinburgh Jewish Cultural Centre and Edinburgh Interfaith Association to welcome you both in person here at the Salisbury Centre. Very exciting to do a live event, and also to our virtual audience online on Zoom. Welcome. My name is Rachel Kaplan. I'm a member of Edinburgh Jewish Cultural Centre and also the new, as of Monday, the new Climate Action Network Coordinator for Edinburgh. Climate Action Network Coordinator. So for the rest of the year, I'm connecting community activity here in the city and inviting organisations to participate in the development of a new Edinburgh Climate Action Network and Hub. So please get in contact if you'd like to find out more about what we're up to and to take part. I've got a few people to thank. This event series, Together for Our Planet, couldn't happen without support from the National Lottery Community Fund Awards for All. So a huge thank you to National Lottery. Also, thank you to the Salisbury Centre for hosting and to Skojek and Jewish Scotland Connected for the equipment, which brings everyone here from Zoom tonight. A huge thank you to our many volunteers who are doing incredible things behind the scenes over many days to make this event happen. Alongside this event, the Edinburgh Jewish Cultural Centre has a packed calendar of upcoming events this year. Next up, on May 23rd, we're hosting Jared Goldfarb for a talk titled Nature Knows No Boundaries, Israeli-Palestinian Partnerships in Creating Sustainable Communities. So please join us for that event. Visit us online at jcc.scot to learn more and sign up for our newsletter. The website's right down there. So on to tonight's event. This is part of a series of Together for Our Planet events that we're hosting to explore a faith perspective on climate action. Previously, we hosted a concert at COP26. I don't know if you're able to attend. An evening of music, song, and poetry inspired by the deep-rooted connections between nature, art, and spirituality. That concert featured Phil Alexander and many, many more. So tonight we're going in to do a deeper dive into the issues of faith and climate, and it's also a chance for us to hear from you and what's important to hear, what's important to you. We want to hear what you think, what we should be together in doing to take action. And all these ideas will be fed back into the Edinburgh Community Climate Action Forum. So a quick note on the format for tonight's event. We have two halves. The first half, we have a wonderful keynote speaker who I will introduce in a moment, who will help spark our ideas and discussion. The second part of the event will be together in breakout rooms, either here in the hall or online on Zoom, and we'll attempt to answer some questions together about climate challenges. So please, if you're on Zoom, do also add your thoughts or comments in the chat as we go along. It now remains for me to introduce our guest speaker. Alastair McIntosh is a human ecologist, writer, speaker, researcher, and activist. He's an honorary senior research fellow at the College of Social Sciences at the University of Glasgow, also a fellow for the Centre for Human Ecology, and was Scotland's first professor of human ecology at the University of Strathclyde. This human ecology work explores our relationships between the natural environment and the social environment. Within this, he's particularly influenced by liberation theology across faiths, this being theology that liberates theology to liberate humanity. I can't wait to hear more about this. So his most recently published book is called Riders on the Storm, The Climate Crisis and the Survival of Being, a book which Michael E. Mann calls a life-giving vision for our collective future. And we have copies available here after the talk this evening. This book rounds on climate change as a call to deepen in our spirituality and relationships in community with others. So please give a very warm welcome for Alastair McIntosh.
And from our teachings, we are not just isolated individuals, veins of meat walking about on legs of bone, but we are held in a greater hand. And tonight, because our hosts are partly the Jewish Cultural Centre, I'd like to speak to that from my understanding of some key principles in Hebrew tradition and what some of the Jewish spiritual teachers, I'll draw especially on the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, have to say about how the insights from Jewish tradition can bring something to the table of world faiths, which is important for us all. You know, those of us from a Christian background interpret the Jewish faith through what we rather rudely call the Old Testament. Let's call it the Hebrew Bible. We tend to interpret it through what is often, especially even evangelical circles, an individualized understanding of spiritual salvation. But one of the most important things about the Jewish tradition, as I understand it, is its emphasis on community. That this is not just about us as individuals, it is about our togetherness and how together we work to heal a fractured world. I think three things are distinctive, or what I'm going to draw on tonight as being distinctive in Jewish spirituality. And I'm going to use my sheet here because I want to quote some material to you. You know, folks, in a traditional old Scottish sermon, according to John Buchan in his wonderful book, Which Would, a sermon should have three heads and an application, three main points, and then what are you going to do about it? What are we called to do, to use the subtitle of tonight's event? Are we okay there, David? Okay. The best laid plans of mice and men gang all awry and justify thine ill. How did it go? Thy ill opinion of me, a fellow mortal and human being, or something to that effect. You see why I bring a crib sheet, folks. Three heads and application. First, the earth is created. Second, the earth is wounded. And third, the earth will be renewed, leading into what we call to do in Jewish tradition known as tikkun olam, which I will attempt to explain later. The earth is created. God holds all of this in God's hand. God, the ground of being. God, the foundation of our consciousness. God, what is behind the universe and beyond the universe, both immanent and transcendent. You can use other words, Buddha nature, Tao, Brahman, Allah, which has a beautiful sound, a mantric sound to it, Goddess, Christ. I don't care. As long as it's about love, life as love made manifest. Job chapter 12 in the Hebrew Bible, one of the most full-on passages of deep ecology ever written. Job saying, I've become a laughingstock. Those who live in comfort have contempt for the unfortunate. Does that not speak to our times just now? Those who live in comfort have contempt for the unfortunate. The tabernacles of the corrupt, of the robbers, prosper. But ask the animals and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky and they will tell you, or speak to the earth and it will teach you, or let the fish of the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every creature and the breath of all humankind. The breath of the spirit, I understand in Hebrew, ruah, being a feminine gendered noun, interestingly. Made male and female, female and male, in the image of God, according to Genesis. And therefore the nature of the Godhead, beyond maleness, beyond femaleness. containing all of these. So the earth created, or as Hinduism would have it, with its triune division of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, God the creator, God the sustainer, God the destroyer, God who brings things around again to complete the great cycles of life. So there's the first point. What happens if in our climate change response in the world, we understand the world to be a sacred thing? We understand this world to be precious and not merely a commodity to be trashed. So secondly, the earth is wounded. Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah. The earth dries up and withers. The whole world withers and grows sick. The earth's high places sicken, and the earth itself is desecrated by the feet of those who live in it. For they have broken the laws, disobeyed the statutes, and violated the eternal covenant. What are those laws and statutes? Fundamentally, as we see time and time again, Jeremiah or Ezekiel are very good examples. We care for the widow, for the orphan, for the alien or the refugee, for the poor. To respect the ground on which you stand, because as Leviticus 25 puts it, you don't own the earth belongs to me, says the Lord your God. And let's remember, when we use that word Lord, we are not meaning in a human sense of what a Lord is. We're meaning in the spiritual sense. In Buddhism and Hinduism, you might say the Vita or the Dharma, that which sustains and holds the structure of reality. Jeremiah unpacks the woundedness of the earth a little bit more. He says, for my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living water, and dug out cisterns for themselves, cracked cisterns that can hold no water. They have forsaken me, and they have dug out cisterns for themselves. Jeremiah there, as he was so often doing, is naming idolatry. When we think of idolatry as building a golden calf or something like that and worshipping the golden calf or whatever it might be, these are just, in my opinion, these are the ways in which a profound poetic storytelling tradition, such as the Hebrew tradition is, indeed also the Islamic tradition is, in fact, the parables of Jesus, you could say all of the Abrahamic faiths are of that nature. These are ways in which story is told to reveal deep reality. What is idolatry in our time? Idolatry is, I can't get no satisfaction because I try and I try and I try. Idolatry is consumerism, as consumption in excess of what is needed for dignified sufficiency. And so if, as people of faith, we had to bring a critique into the world as to how we tackle climate change, de-escalating consumerism, and putting in its place justice, so that the poor do not shiver unable to heat their homes, while the rich heat swimming pools, is a kind of calling we might consider. Thirdly, the earth will be renewed. So the earth is created, the earth is wounded, or in Christian terms, fallen. The earth will be renewed. What does Jeremiah do when the Babylonians are beating down the gates of Jerusalem? Why Jeremiah tells us? Because they neglected the alien and the widow and the orphan and the poor. These are the statutes of God, Jeremiah tells us. You see why I can't neglect this tradition. You know, I feel we've got to honor this tradition. Often we don't know enough about it. We get caught up in all kinds of stereotypes about the Jews. And we don't understand the depth of what we might be talking about. I'm generalizing there when I say we, but you'll get my point. The importance in interfaith work, not just of interfaith dialogue, but going deeper, interfaith appreciation. What is there in this tradition that I can appreciate? What brings life and love to the table of world faiths? The earth will be renewed. What does Jeremiah do? He goes out and buys a field. He goes out and buys a field. He puts his faith in the basis where community will be re-established after the return from Babylonian exile. We might think of suffering in the world today as varying forms of, metaphorically, Babylonian exile, in the sense that Jeremiah understood it as an exile brought upon the people themselves because they were not they were saying to the refugees, we'll send you back to Rwanda. That kind of thing. Send you to Rwanda. It's not even back to Rwanda. And Jeremiah explained buying the field, saying, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Take these documents, the title deeds, both the sealed and unsealed copies of the deeds of purchase, and put them in a clay jar so they will last a long time. For this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Houses, fields, and vineyards will again be bought in this land. The land will be restored. Houses, fields, and vineyards will be restored. And so, to Isaiah, and I'm going to read you passages from Isaiah 55, just selected couplets, pairs of lines, matched with a vision from Genesis, perhaps building on Genesis 28 and the stairway to heaven. So listen to, I will read 2 lines from Isaiah and then 2 lines from Genesis, folks. You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. They're the feeling I get when I look to the west and my spirit is crying for leaving. The mountains and hills will burst into song before you, and it's whispered that soon, if we all call the tune, then the piper will lead us to reason. And all the trees of the field will clap their hands. And a new day will dawn for those who stand long, and the forests will echo his laughter. Instead of the thorn bush will grow the pine tree, and instead of the briars, the myrtle will grow. Dear lady, can you hear the wind blow? And did you know your stairway lies on the whispering wind? This will be for the Lord's renown, an everlasting sign that will endure forever. Folks, people often say to me, Alastair, you'd have so much more traction if you didn't go on about all that biblical stuff and God stuff and Bhagavad Gita and Sufi teachings, or the opening verse of the Quran, in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficent, the cherisher of the world. Why do you bother with all of that old stuff? And I'm saying, don't you realize it is so deep embedded in your culture, as I've just shown by interweaving that passage from Isaiah with lyrics from Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven, though not quite perhaps the original Genesis 28 version of the same with Jacob's Ladder. Those are my 3 heads, folks. The earth is created. The earth is wounded. The earth will be renewed. And so to the applications. What are we called to do? I would put it to you that as the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs lays out in his book To Heal a Fractured World. I'm grateful to Sister Isabel Smythe for an event she organised at the synagogue in Giffnock a few years ago, which was a study day around this book. I put it to you that the calling taught to us by the Jewish tradition is tikkun olam, which Sachs translates as to heal a fractured world. And I just want to briefly read you some passages and then I will close. So Rabbi Sachs is drawing on the version of this, the understanding of this, from Rabbi Isaac ben Solomon Loria, who is a 16th century Jewish spiritual teacher. And in Tikkun Olam, the healing of the world is the whole cosmos. This is cosmological. This is a repairing of the creation through the process of creation. And so it says Sachs, this is a vision of a cosmic catastrophe, the damage of the world, the vision of a cosmic catastrophe progressively healed by individual deeds, which though they may seem small and local, though what you might do in your faith groups or your individual lives might seem small and local, mend the world. Lurianic Kabbalah spoke to a Jewry shattered by persecution. It still does as a metaphor for a post-Holocaust world. The world is fractured, filled with broken vessels. I offered you an ever-flowing fountain, and you dug yourselves cracked cisterns, Jeremiah. The world is fractured, filled with broken vessels. However, by a life suffused with the love of God, it is possible to redeem these fragments and restore them to their proper place as containers of divine light, There is learning. There is learning to be had in those fractures. Lurianic Kabbalah explained catastrophe without diminishing it, transforming its negative energies into a force for healing and restoration. So, folks, I was going to read you more from that, but we need to respect the time with a bit of catching up to do, so I won't. But I think you get the idea of what Tikkun Olam is about, if I have understood it correctly. Please, those of you who are Jewish here, put me right if I've taken any missteps. And I would put it to you in terms of our theme of what are we called to do as faith groups facing climate change. We are called to do more than the Greenpeaces or the Friends of the Earth or the WWF or the IPCC or whatever else it might be. We are called to dig deep into our traditions, and you can do this in every spiritual tradition that is based on love. We are called to just dig deep into those and draw out their calling, draw out their meaning in our time today, and live that out into the world. How you do that, how you live your life in such witness, as my Roman Catholic friends would often put it. How you do that might perhaps be a focus for your discussions just now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alastair. That was really perfect springboard for the discussions that we're now going to have. As we think about the beauty of creation and how it's been wounded, and now what we could do to try and help heal the earth. So thank you so much. We are going to move into the second part of tonight's program. Alastair will be here to join in discussions with you in breakout rooms here in the room and online, and also at the end of the night we'll be signing books, so please do stick around if you can. For the second part of tonight's program, we are going to go into breakout groups. Each group will have a facilitator. We do also ask that you appoint someone in your group to be the recorder for each group who can make notes and also give your groups feedback when we all reconvene back here online and in person at the end. And we'll welcome back. How is Zoom?
Very good.
Are we back? Hello, welcome back, everyone. I've been interested to eavesdrop on some of your discussions, and it seems that everyone could talk about this all night, so I'm glad that you're so fired up and inspired. I'd now like to, we're going to report back and share with each other what each group, the takeaways from each group conversation. I invite one person to come up from each group, and we will also be inviting the Zoom groups as well to present. Who would like to start us off? Would someone from the group in the other room?
Yeah, that's going to be me.
That's going to be you. Well done. Great. Please do come, and if you could speak into the microphone when you do it so that the people at joining us online can hear you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Our discussion was quite abstract, I think, and revolved a lot around the role of faith and where faith has contributed to the answers, but also where in certain circumstances and certain times faith may have organized religion may have contributed towards some of the issues that we have to face now. And I think what we were most interested in is how we make or create change. And I think we came up with more questions than answers, to be perfectly honest. And we talked a lot about how do we learn to act collaboratively, because so much of the way society is organized is stopping us or encouraging us not to act collaboratively. And I think we saw that as a major challenge. We talked about small scale societies and how at different times in history they had perhaps been an answer to some of the challenges and problems that we are currently facing. We talked a little bit about the kibbutz movement in Israel, and when that was a very successful movement, but how that is no longer the case by and large. And there was also somebody in our group who may choose to tell us more about it, who had actually spent time with indigenous societies and their particular attitude and outlook, and how that had been a real learning experience for him in terms of how societies can organize themselves. But of course the challenge is how do you transfer that knowledge to post-industrial society where, as Alastair said in his talk, how do you de-escalate consumerism when consumerism now is seen as a sign of success in society? And that seems to present a real challenge. But again, somebody else in the group said, we are all breathing the same air, and that how do we generate the change that is going to make that air pure for all of us to breathe. And we talked about breaking down silos in society and finding a common ethos, values that people can gather around and collect around, whether they are members of a faith group or not, that there are values that people can promote and gather around, and can make a difference. So I'm sure other members of the group, when we get into the discussion, will want to expand on some of those points, but that was kind of us.
Thank you very much. Should we hear from one of the Zoom groups? We will unmute. Please, can somebody who is speaking from the Zoom group, please wave.
Yes.
Adrian. Hello, we
Hi.
can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Adrian Shaw from Argyll. Hello, Rachel. Hello, Alastair. We had a big discussion about what does it mean to be together in a world of such profound inequality. And we talked a bit about Elon Musk and the other super rich who are having adventures in space, taking themselves off, exploring space, and wondered if this was a vanity project. But at the same time, when people cannot afford to pay the bills, we thought the super rich might be living in a small world of their own, that they're probably in deep denial about what they're doing, and that they may even, in a sense, be playing God, which was a challenging thought. Closer to home, another example of that profound inequality comes from the Scottish Highlands at the present time, where Anders Poulsen, who is another billionaire who made his money on internet shopping, is now the largest landowner in Scotland. And at a meeting in the Highlands this weekend, there was real anger about the way that he is imposing his vision on other people in the Highlands. Therefore, the question we pose is, what does it mean to be together for the climate when structural inequality is so profound and so damaging? How can we be together under those circumstances?
Thank you. It's great that that was such a different perspective than the other group. We would,
Rachel, could
yes.
you just repeat the last question? I didn't quite hear it. Could you just repeat it? What does it mean for?
Oh,
how can we be together in
Can we-
conditions
yes.
of profound inequality?
yes.
What do you mean by?
We be together in community when there are conditions of profound
Inequality.
Thank you.
Sorry. And now if I could invite our other group here from Salisbury Centre to present. Thank you.
Yeah, so well, we started with a kind of go round of introductions. I can't show you it now because I've got to read from it. If I put it like that, does that work? Oh, okay. My beautiful assistant. Yeah, we started out with a go round of talking about our own faith groups and our own kind of experiences. And we were actually very interfaith, two members of the Jewish faith, one member of Islam, one Christian who works with indigenous American traditions, one Quaker who is also influenced by Zen Buddhism, and one Zen Buddhist who's also influenced by deep ecology. So we're pretty diverse in that respect. And talked a little bit about our own kind of experiences and influences in terms of kind of a sustainability perspective. And then we started talking about the things that we can do. And the kind of from the perspective of individual consumer choice, people talked about the different things that that we are doing, that we can do in terms of reducing our individual impact, and even sort of at the community level. For example, working here at the Salisbury Centre is one of the things that was talked about. But then we also spoke about systemic change and how, you know, individual consumer choice isn't available to everybody, and also it's not sufficient. So we really have to aim at systemic change, but then that's difficult because the kind of structures of power within society get replicated in the groups that are trying to do that change. So that's kind of, and there was a little bit on the other side that David was talking about at the end, that the Wounded Earth is evidence of the kind of power over anthropocentric structures that we have to try and transform. So
Thank you very much. And now I invite our second group on Zoom. Please, if someone could give a wave if you are presenting for your group. Ian, great. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Again, we had a very interesting conversation, having pagan elements, pagan beliefs, and Christian and Quaker influences. But I think we were very struck by Alastair in the very positive views of the fact that, you know, individuals can make a difference and individuals can help to heal the world. I think there's so much negativity, and often I hear people saying, well, I'm only one person, I can't make a difference. So it's almost like they just give in. You know, it's almost like something too powerful, which is above me. So I think we were all struck by that we can all play a little part in renewing the world, and Tick and Ham, and the whole idea of renewing the world. We also talked a lot about not being wasteful as being something that we could do. We talked a lot about waste, and we had lots of conversations around new initiatives of people repairing clothes, and you know, also the amount of people who are becoming vegan, and just the whole idea that small changes can make a difference, I think, was a big emphasis of what we were talking about. I just wonder if there's anything else, Anne or Jean, from your notes that you would like to add? No. Oh, unmute.
And being positive, the importance of being positive.
Yes,
Positive rather than negative.
positive and renewal, and the inevitable part of renewal is change, so accepting change, I suppose, as well, from the renewal.
Yeah, so it's just an emphasis on the positive, that we can be part of a change that can help to heal the world, and we can all do our part towards that, I think. Oh, and I did get a message, I should say, I was just when I was sitting here, Annie Rinchin, who had to go because of Zoom connection, left. She made an important point here. I'd like to contribute my own thoughts on the need for levelling down as well as levelling up. There has to be both ends of the spectrum to achieve balanced results. I think that echoes with some of what the previous groups have been saying as well.
What does that mean?
Levelling up as well as levelling down. Well, for me, that's, I don't know if anyone else wants to add into that, but to me, that's partly about equality. And when people were on about Elliot Musk and wanting to spend all that money to go to space, when there are people who are starving and don't have anything, I think our whole infrastructures. Someone was talking to me about recently on an environment program on Islamic radio channel, and I was talking about the need not to measure things in terms of gross domestic product, but more in gross domestic happiness, and the balance that we have in our life and our social structures, and how we care for one another. So I think it's a whole looking at, you know, we don't having these big gaps between those who have so much and those who have so little. That's how I understand it. Thank you.
So we are coming up to the end now. I would like to invite Alastair back up to give us a few closing remarks and thoughts, and also can answer. We've got time for maybe a few questions if you have questions and would like to discuss anything with him. And then he will be here signing books. So please do stay around. So Alastair, would you like to take us out? Take us out for the...
Thanks, folks. Excuse me being very fussy with the mask, but because I'm giving quite a lot of talks in different places, I'm both a high risk and at high risk. So that's why I'm careful at these. Am I speaking too quietly? Yes, how's that? Is that better? Hello, testing. Yep. I'm afraid I didn't catch quite a lot of what was fed back there. My hearing is very bad, and there was something not feeding through to my end. But I picked up on some points. How do you live with justice in an unjust world? And I would say, from your tradition, dig from where you stand. This is what the prophets were on about the whole time. When you ask why is it that Islam spreads where there's a lot of poor people, which it does, it's because it emphasizes social justice with things, not just with the zakat, the wealth tax, but in other ways as well. When we Christians ask, why does it have so little traction today? Perhaps it might have something to do with the fact that, as Ronald Sider, who is actually an evangelical theologian writing in the 1980s, puts it, there's too many rich Christians living in an age of hunger. And we dishonor our traditions when they stand for cosmic justice, for God's justice. And we turn our backs on what justice calls from us and live lives of accumulation that furthermore result in climate change. I believe it's not God that brought the Babylonians almost to the redemptive force on ancient Israel. It's not God that destroys the city or brings a plague. It's that these are consequences of our not living in right relationship. And what is so uncomfortable is that we all know our own hypocrisies. We all know the many ways in which we do not live in right relationship. And that calls us back to theologies of confession, of forgiveness, and of accepting our humanity and accepting the humanity of others. In the passages I didn't read from Rabbi Sachs, and I might circulate my notes if I send them to Janet, the notes I was reading from today. Now I'll just photocopy those half dozen pages in that section of the book. But he repeatedly emphasizes that tikkun olam is not about do-gooding. It's not about us going out and doing the right thing. It's much deeper than that. Tikkun olam understands human failings. Tikkun olam, as Rabbi Sachs presents it, is about constantly trying to call ourselves back into relationship with the divine. And then the work becomes the work of God. You see what that does? It allows us to transcend our limitations. Because if we don't do that, if we say, well, I've got to be the one that does it all. I came in today, I waved in front of you pieces of insulation from our house and told you about a heat pump and solar panels and so on. And I bet a few of you were thinking, oh, you know, we've not done anything like that. And we're not likely to either for whatever reason. Well, I was in a fortunate, privileged position to be able to do that. And I had the technical know-how to assess it in amongst all the spivish salespeople around trying to push these things. I knew enough about what I was doing to do it, but not everybody can do that. What Tikkun Olam allows us to do is to face our own shortcomings without having us undermine the collective need for change. I will be driving in my car back to Glasgow this evening. I could have, if I'd set out earlier, come by train and bus, and when I get back, train and whatever buses will still be running then back to where I am in govern. I didn't do that. I took a short cut. We're all hypocrites in this matter. But if we can't face that, if we don't confess that, at least to God and at least one other human being, you see what happens. Instead, to accommodate our shortcomings, we deny the issue. We say, well, it doesn't really matter. Climate change isn't really happening. I'm not going to make any difference. So it's so important in these spiritual traditions to be able to face our human failings and then not to wallow in them, but to say, I'll do what I can. Why didn't I come by train today? It would have added 3 hours onto my journey time. I was already tired from other things, and I've got a heavy weekend coming up. I just chose to look after myself in order that what I would do here tonight, I could do well. And because I'm able to say that, it allows the importance of the overarching issue to be held in the light, as we Quakers would put it. And yet not to feel that I've got to turn away from the light, because I don't always keep up with it. And not to feel, not to virtue signal. I could have just shown you my high technology stuff and left it at that. And you'd all go away thinking, isn't he wonderful? He's doing all of these things. But you'd be left with a bit of a sinking feeling. As it is, I hope that what I've just said perhaps gives you a reassuring feeling. You'll think, oh, he's actually just like me. And that provides an honest basis for proceeding on. So Tikkun Olam is about this constant reference back to the divine. Set the controls for the heart of the sun, says Pink Floyd. Set the controls for the heart of the divine. It's the same thing, symbolically. Set the controls for the heart of the divine. Keep calling yourself back to that. Then how do you live in a world of injustice? The prophets show it all the time. They name injustice. They are not afraid to name it. And they create an ambience where people try to work in a different way. We're in difficult ground here. I find myself almost getting lost in it, because you get lost in surrender into the divine. I live, yet not I, but Christ lives within me, as we have it in the Christian tradition. Something greater than the ego self that is me, the small self that is me, lives in me. And I can only say that in my experience, that's what gives I suppose a courage to carry on. And when I look at people doing beautiful work in the world, it's what gives them the courage to go on. And in the Christian tradition, Jesus tells the story of the widow's mite. The rich man was able to give a huge, big charitable donation. The widow gave just a small coin, a mite. There is no record of what the rich man's donation bought. What we remember is the Tikkun Olam, the healing of a fractured world, that the widow's witness brought about. Bear witness when you can. I would say, don't overdo it. Don't push yourself into a space where you are virtue signaling. Do it because you are in accordance with God. And if you are not able to do it, because you're not in accordance with God. As Rabbi Sachs says, the essence of tikkun olam is prayer. The essence of tikkun olam is to constantly ground ourselves into prayer. What is prayer? Prayer is immersion in the God space. God, come to my heart. God, help me. Prayer is immersion in the God space. Be still and know that I am God, as the Psalms have it. Oh, it's such a trip, isn't it? You know, these traditions, they are so deep, they are so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And people say, well, look at all the bad things. Look at all the evil that's been done in the name of religion. And you say, well, why is it being done in the name of religion? It's being done in the religion because spiritual power is the very deepest form of power. And that is why bad actors try to control religion so they can control other people. This has to be about what the Tibetan Buddhists call great liberation, the Tibetan book of great liberation. This has to be about great liberation and not allowing our traditions to be used by those who blaspheme them.
Thank you.
That is the end of our event for this evening. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending and your thoughtful input and participation. A reminder to please sign up for our newsletter at jcc.scot and get all the news on our coming events. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon. And again, a huge thank you to our guest speaker for this evening, Alastair McIntosh.